That night, the fluorescent lights in St. Michael's Hospital flickered 3 times before going dark. Some said it was a storm. Others whispered about the boy who ran through the corridors, screaming words that shouldn't have been possible. But no one, not the nurses, not the security guards, not even the priest who happened to be visiting, could explain the cold that settled into room 447 like a living thing. Or why, when the machines finally went silent, the girl's father didn't cry. He only smiled, a smile that didn't belong to anything human. The rain hammered against the windows of St. Michael's Hospital with the fury of something desperate to get inside. It was 11:47 p.m. when Marcus Webb pushed through the emergency room doors, soaked to bone, his sneakers squeaking against the polished floor. He was 14, thin as a shadow, with clothes that hung off his frame like they'd been borrowed from someone twice his size. His hair was plastered to his forehead, and his eyes, dark, wild, impossibly knowing, darted around the reception area, as if searching for something only he could see. The night nurse, a woman named Patricia who'd worked the graveyard shift for 23 years, looked up from her computer with the practiced indifference of someone who'd seen every kind of human desperation. "Visiting hours are over. Honey, come back tomorrow." Marcus didn't stop walking. He moved past her desk with the determination of someone following an invisible thread, his breath coming in short gasps that fogged in the suddenly cold air. Patricia felt the temperature drop and frowned, reaching for her cardigan. "Hey," I said, "visiting hours are—" "Room 447, Marcus interrupted, his voice cracking. "I need to get to room 447. Now." Something in his tone made Patricia's hand freeze on the phone she'd been reaching for to call security. The boy's eyes weren't just desperate. They were haunted, carrying the weight of something ancient and terrible. She'd seen grief before, seen fear, seen madness. This was different. This was certainty. "That's the ICU. Family only, and—" "She's dying," Marcus said, and the lights above them flickered. "Once, twice, 3 times. She's dying, and if I don't get there in the next 4 minutes, she'll be gone forever. But if you just let me through, I can save her." Patricia should have called security, should have stood up, blocked his path, followed protocol. Instead, she found herself pressing the button that unlocked the ICU doors, her hand moving as if controlled by something beyond her will. The boy ran. The 4th floor was silent except for the rhythmic beeping of machines and the soft shuffle of nurses' shoes on linoleum. Marcus's footsteps echoed like drum beats as he sprinted down the corridor, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might burst through his ribs. He could feel it now, the pull, the gravity of destiny dragging him forward. It had started 3 days ago with the dreams, then the voices, then the vision that had torn him from his mattress in the shelter and sent him running through the storm to this place, this moment, this impossible choice. Room 447 sat at the end of the hall, its door slightly ajar. Through the gap, Marcus could see the blue glow of monitors, the silhouette of machines keeping someone alive through sheer mechanical will. He burst through the door without knocking. The girl lay in the center of the room, suspended in a web of tubes and wires. She was perhaps 16, with pale skin that seemed to glow in the artificial light, and dark hair spread across the pillow like spilled ink. Her chest rose and fell with the rhythm of the ventilator, each breath not her own. Beside her bed stood a man. He was tall, impossibly tall, dressed in a black suit that seemed to absorb the light around it. His hair was silver white, pulled back from a face that was beautiful in the way that ancient statues are beautiful. Perfect, cold, inhuman. His eyes, when they turned to Marcus, were the color of old blood. "Get out," the man said, his voice like silk over steel. Marcus's legs trembled, every instinct screaming at him to run. But the pull was stronger. The certainty that had dragged him here held him in place like iron chains. "Turn off the machines," he gasped, the words tumbling out before he could stop them. "Your daughter will come out of the coma." The room went silent. Even the machines seemed to pause, their beeping fading into a hollow quiet that pressed against Marcus's eardrums like cotton. The tall man moved with fluid grace, crossing the space between them in a single heartbeat. His hand closed around Marcus's throat, not choking, but holding, feeling the pulse that hammered there like a trapped bird. "What did you say?" The man's breath was cold, carrying the scent of old earth and older blood. "Your daughter," Marcus wheezed, tears streaming down his face, not from the grip, but from a vision burning behind his eyes. A vision of this girl, this beautiful dying girl, opening her eyes and speaking words that would change everything. She's not dying. She's waiting. The machines are holding her between worlds. Turn them off, and she'll come back. I swear it. I swear it on everything I am. The man's grip tightened for a moment, his eyes searching Marcus's face with an intensity that felt like being flayed open. Then, slowly, he released him. Marcus collapsed to his knees, gasping. "Who are you?" the man asked, and there was something new in his voice now. Not anger. Fear. "I don't know," Marcus sobbed, because it was true. He didn't know why he could see things before they happened. Didn't know why he'd woken up 3 days ago with knowledge burning in his brain like prophecy. "I just know that if you don't turn off the machines in the next 90 seconds, you'll lose her forever. And if you do..." He looked up, meeting those terrible red eyes. "If you do, she'll wake up. She'll open her eyes, and she'll tell you something you need to hear. Something about the boy who saved her." The door burst open behind them. 2 nurses rushed in, followed by a security guard whose hand was already reaching for his radio. "Sir, we need you to leave immediately." The tall man raised one hand, and they all froze. Simply stopped moving, as if time itself had decided to pause. Marcus stared in horror as the nurses stood like statues, their mouths open midward, their eyes fixed and glassy. 70 seconds, Marcus whispered, because the countdown in his head was as real as his heartbeat. The man turned back to his daughter. For the first time, Marcus saw something crack in that perfect, inhuman face. Grief, raw and ancient and terrible. "She's been like this for 3 months, he said softly. "Every night I stand here and listen to machines breathe for her. Every night I pray to gods I stopped believing in centuries ago. And now you, a child, a human, a nothing, you burst in here with impossible words and expect me to kill my daughter on your say-so?" "I'm not asking you to kill her," Marcus said, climbing to his feet despite his shaking legs. "I'm asking you to let her go. Just for a moment. Just long enough for her to find her way back." 40 seconds. The man's hand moved to the ventilator. His fingers, pale and long, hovered over the power switch. "If you're wrong," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper that somehow filled the entire room. "If you're wrong, I will take everything from you. Your life, your soul, your very existence will be unmade. Do you understand?" Marcus nodded, tears still streaming. "I understand, but I'm not wrong. Please, trust me." 20 seconds. The man's finger pressed a switch. The ventilator's rhythmic hissing stopped. The monitors began to wail as oxygen levels dropped. As the girl's body realized it was on its own, the nurses remained frozen, the security guard's hand still reaching for his radio. Time suspended in this impossible moment. 10 seconds. 9. 8. The girl's chest stopped moving. The heart monitor's beeping began to slow, each pulse stretching longer, the gaps between them filling with terrible silence. 5. 4. 3. Marcus dropped his knees beside the bed, his hand reaching out to touch the girl's cold fingers. "Come back," he whispered. "Please, come back. I didn't come all this way just to watch you die. Come back." 2. 1. The heart monitor flatlined. The long, endless tone of death filled the room like a scream. The man's face went white, whiter than already was, and his hand shot out toward the machines, ready to reverse his terrible choice. And then the girl gasped. It wasn't the mechanical gasp of a ventilator forcing air into dead lungs. It was real, desperate, human. Her back arched off the bed, her hands clawed at the tubes in her throat, and her eyes, oh God, her eyes, snapped open, blazing with a light that was definitely not human. The frozen figures in the room suddenly moved again, time resuming its flow. The nurses screamed. The security guard stumbled backward. And Marcus Webb, poor Marcus Webb, who'd spent 14 years invisible to the world, found himself staring into eyes that saw everything. The girl's hand shot out and grabbed his wrist with impossible strength. When she spoke, her voice was layered, Two voices, maybe three, speaking in perfect harmony. "The seer," she said. "You found me. Finally." Then she turned to the tall man, her father, the vampire King Marcus didn't yet know was a king, and smiled a smile that was equal parts love and warning. "Father," she said, "we have very little time. The boy is the key, and they're already coming for him." The hospital room transformed in the space of a breath. The sterile white walls seemed to darken, shadows pooling in corners that shouldn't have existed, and the air grew thick with the scent of old incense and older magic. Marcus felt it crawling across his skin like static electricity, raising every hair on his body. The girl, this impossible girl who'd been dead 30 seconds ago, still gripped his wrist, her fingers cold but alive, pulsing with a strength that made his bones ache. "Serafina," the tall man breathed, and for the first time, Marcus heard actual emotion in his voice. Not the cold control, not the threatening whisper, but something raw and breaking. You're awake." The girl, Serafina, released Marcus and turned her attention fully to her father. The nurses and security guards seemed to have forgotten how to move, standing frozen not by magic this time, but by sheer disbelief. Serafina pulled the remaining tubes from her arms with clinical efficiency, ignoring the blood that welled up and just as quickly stopped flowing. Her movements were graceful, practiced, as if she'd done this 1,000 times before. "I've been awake for weeks, father," she said, swinging her legs off the bed. She wore only a hospital gown, but she moved with the dignity of someone dressed for battle. "Trapped between the breathing and the dying, listening to you recite poems in Latin at 3 a.m, listening to you beg, listening to you plan revenge against the hunters who put me here." She stood, wavered for just a moment, then steadied. "But I couldn't come back. The machines wouldn't let me. They kept pulling me toward the living world, but not far enough. I was drowning in the space between." Marcus's head spun. Hunters? Latin poems? What the hell had he walked into? The tall man, the vampire, Marcus's brain finally supplied, because nothing else made sense, moved toward his daughter with a careful approach as someone expecting a dream to shatter. His hand reached out, trembling, and touched her cheek. "How?" he whispered. "How is this possible?" Serafina's eyes, which Marcus now saw were violet, actual violet, like flowers in twilight, shifted back to him. "Ask the seer," she said. "He's the one who found a thread I couldn't reach. He's the one who knew what needed to happen." "I'm not a seer," Marcus said automatically, his voice sounding small and childish in the suddenly mythological space of the hospital room. I'm nobody. I live in a shelter. I don't even know why I'm here." "Liar," Serafina said, but not unkindly. She moved toward him, and Marcus noticed she didn't walk so much as glide, her bare feet barely touching the floor. "You've been having visions since you were 7 years old, dreams that come true, moments where you see the world as it will be, not as it is. You just learn to ignore them, bury them, pretend they were coincidences or madness, because acknowledging them would mean acknowledging you're different. And being different when you're poor and powerless is dangerous." Marcus felt his face burning. How did she know? How could she possibly know about the dream he'd had at 7? About the fire in the apartment building 2 blocks over? About how he'd told his mother, and she'd laughed. And then the next day they'd watched the smoke rise, and she'd never laughed at his dreams again. About how he'd learned to keep his mouth shut, to let the visions flow through him like water, not catching, not holding. "The gift runs in bloodlines," the tall man said, his voice regaining some of its earlier control. He stepped back from his daughter, his eyes cataloging her, checking for injuries, for signs of weakness, for anything that might steal her away again. But it's rare, incredibly rare. Most humans with the sight burn out before puberty, their minds fragmenting under the weight of futures they can't change. You survived. That means your line is strong. Old. My line. Marcus laughed, a bitter sound. My line is welfare checks and eviction notices. My mom died when I was 10. I don't even know who my father was. There's no old bloodline. There's just me, trying to survive until tomorrow. Your mother, Serafina said, tilting her head in a way that reminded Marcus of a bird examining something curious and potentially dangerous. What was her name? Rachel. Rachel Webb. Why? Serafina and her father exchanged a look. Quick, loaded with meaning Marcus couldn't decode. Webb, the vampire repeated slowly. Not a common name in certain circles. There was a family, once, centuries ago. They called themselves the Weavers. They could see the threads of fate, the pattern of what would be. They served as advisors to... He paused. To people like me. Like you, Marcus repeated. You mean vampires? The word hung in the air like a confession. The nurses finally seemed to remember they had voices. One of them made a small, choked sound. The security guard's hand went to his belt. Though what he thought he was going to do against creatures that could stop time, Marcus had no idea. The vampire smiled, and it wasn't a kind expression. Yes, vampires. Lycanthropes. Fae. Every shadow your species has feared for millennia. We're real. We've always been real. And the Weavers helped us navigate the future for a price. His eyes found Marcus again, but they disappeared 300 years ago, hunted to extinction by those who feared their power. Or so we thought. I don't know anything about Weavers, Marcus insisted, backing toward the door. This was too much. Way too much. He'd come here following a vision, expecting maybe to save a girl and feel good about himself for once. Not to discover he was part of some extinct magical bloodline. Look, she's awake. That's what I came to do. I'm going to go now. You can't, Serafina said, and there was genuine regret in her voice. I'm sorry, Marcus. Truly. But the moment you walked through that door, the moment you spoke prophecy in front of witnesses, you became part of this world. There's no going back. As if to punctuate her words, the hospital room's windows exploded inward. Glass shattered in a crystalline wave, and 3 figures dropped through the opening, landing in perfect crouches on the linoleum. They wore black tactical gear, faces hidden behind masks, and they carried weapons that gleamed with silver and smelled of garlic and hawthorn, scents that made the vampire hiss and step back instinctively. Vampire King Victor, one of the figures said, voice mechanically distorted. You're in violation of the covenant, showing your nature in front of civilians, revealing the hidden world. And the figure's eyes found Marcus, and even through the mask, Marcus felt the weight of that gaze, consorting with an unregistered seer. All capital offenses. Victor moved faster than Marcus's eyes could follow, suddenly standing between his daughter and the hunters. The boy is under my protection, he said, his voice dropping to a growl that rattled the remaining glass in the window frames. As is this hospital and everyone in it. Leave. Now. Or I will remind you why your predecessors learned not to hunt me. Can't do that, the hunter said, raising their weapon. Not a gun, Marcus realized, but something stranger. A crossbow of sorts, loaded with bolts that glowed with pale blue light. Orders are orders. The boy comes with us. The girl, too. She's been compromised, been in contact with civilian minds while in her coma state. She's a breach risk. Over my corpse, Victor said. That, the hunter replied, can be arranged. Marcus didn't see who moved first. One moment there was tense standoff. The next the room exploded into violence. Victor blurred into motion, his form seeming to multiply, shadows peeling away from his body and taking solid shape. 3 of him, 5, a dozen, all moving independently. The hunters fired, their glowing bolts streaking through the air, and wherever they struck, Victor's shadow screamed and dissolved into smoke. Serafina grabbed Marcus and dragged him behind the hospital bed, her strength surprising for someone who'd been in a coma 5 minutes ago. Don't look directly at them, she hissed in his ear. The hunters use blessed silver. 1 scratch and you'll burn from the inside out. I'm not a vampire. Marcus shouted over the sound of combat, the wet sound of impact, the crack of breaking furniture, the continuous scream of the heart monitor that no one had bothered to turn off. No, but you've got magic in your blood now. I woke you up when I grabbed you, activated what was sleeping. You're a beacon to anything supernatural within 10 miles. She peeked over the bed, swore softly in a language Marcus didn't recognize. We need to run. Can you run? Marcus thought about all the times he'd run. From bullies, from cops, from social workers who want to put him in another foster home. He was good at running. Yeah, I can run. Then run. They bolted for the door as Victor. The real Victor, Marcus somehow knew, distinguished from his shadows by the way reality bent slightly around him, grabbed one of the hunters and threw them through the wall. Not into the wall. Through it. The figure disappeared in a cloud of plastered dust and didn't come back. The corridor was chaos. Alarms blared. Nurses ran in every direction. Patients in wheelchairs and walkers tried to move faster than their bodies would allow. Faces painted with terror. Marcus and Serafina wove through the crowd, heading for the stairwell. Behind them, Marcus heard the hunters shouting, heard Victor's roar, heard the sound of metal screeching as something heavy was torn apart. They hit the stairwell at full sprint, taking the steps 3 at a time. Serafina moved like water, like wind, never losing her balance even in the hospital gown. Marcus struggled to keep up, his lungs burning, his legs screaming. 4 flights. 5. 6. They burst out into the ground floor lobby and froze. A woman stood in the center of the lobby, and every person in the space, patients, visitors, security guards, was on their knees, heads bowed as if in prayer. The woman was beautiful in a way that hurt to look at, with white blonde hair and eyes like chips of ice. She wore a simple dress, pale blue, and carried no weapons. She didn't need weapons. The air around her shimmered with power. The prophecy child, the woman said, her voice clear and bright as a bell. The lost weaver. Oh, this is delicious. Victor's been hiding you well, hasn't he? Keeping you in poverty, in obscurity, waiting for the right moment to activate your gift. She smiled, and it was the smile of a predator. But I found you first, and now you're mine. Serafina's hand tightened on Marcus's arm. Run, she whispered. When I move, you run. Don't look back. Don't stop. Get to the old church on 7th Street, the abandoned one. Go to the basement. There's a door with 3 circles carved into it. Knock 4 times and say my name. They'll let you in. What? No, I'm not leaving you. You have to. This is Lady Morgana. She's old, so old that even my father fears her. Serafina's violet eyes met his, and Marcus saw true fear there for the first time. If she takes you, she'll drain every vision from your mind until there's nothing left but an empty shell. You'll spend the rest of your life as her prophet, speaking futures you can't understand, trapped in a prison of her making. So when I move, you run. Serafina stepped forward, placing herself between Marcus and the woman, Lady Morgana. She spread her arms wide, and her hospital gown began to smoke and char, burning away to reveal pale skin covered in tattoos. Not ink, but something that moved and shifted, symbols that hurt to look at directly. Hello, Morgana, Serafina said pleasantly. Come to finish what you started 3 months ago. Morgana's smile widened. Dear Serafina, you know I only put you in that coma because your father was being unreasonable about the territory disputes. If he'd simply agreed to my terms, I wouldn't have had to make an example. Her eyes flicked to Marcus. But this changes things. A living weaver changes everything. Give him to me, and I'll forget about the eastern territories. I'll even throw in a treaty. 20 years of peace. Pass, Serafina said, and then she moved. Marcus never saw exactly what happened. There was light, blinding purple-white light, and the sound of thunder inside the building, and Lady Morgana's scream of rage. He felt Serafina's hand on his back, shoving him toward the exit, and then he was running again, bursting to the hospital doors into the rain-soaked night. Behind him, the hospital exploded. Not literally, but every window on the ground floor blew outward simultaneously, glass raining down like deadly snow. Marcus didn't look back. He ran into the storm, his feet pounding the pavement, following the route that appeared in his mind like a map drawn in fire. 7th Street, old church, basement, 3 circles. For Knox. He ran, and behind him, the night filled with screams and light, and the sound of ancient powers going to war. He ran, and somewhere in the back of his mind, a voice that wasn't his own whispered, "This is only the beginning. The real storm is yet to come." Marcus Webb, 14 years old, poor, powerless, invisible, ran toward a future he couldn't see, but somehow knew would destroy everything he'd ever been. And somewhere in the rain-dark streets, something else began to run too, following his scent, following his magic, hunting the lost weaver, who didn't yet know what he was, or what he would become. The abandoned church on 7th Street looked like it was held together by faith alone. Ironic, considering it had been abandoned by the faithful decades ago. Its Gothic spire leaned slightly to the left, as if tired of pointing toward heaven, and its stained glass windows had been broken so many times that the remaining shards created abstract constellations of colored glass. Rain poured through holes in the roof, and the entire structure seemed to sag under the weight of its own forgotten history. Marcus stood across the street, soaked to the skin, shivering not from cold but from adrenaline and terror. His lungs burned, his legs trembled. Behind him, the city skyline glowed with the strange light of the battle still raging at the hospital. Purple flashes that turned the low clouds into a bruised canvas, followed by thunder that wasn't quite thunder. He'd run 12 blocks in the rain, dodging through alleys and side streets, following the map that had appeared in his mind like divine GPS. Get to the old church on 7th Street. The basement, door with 3 circles. Knock 4 times. Say Seraphina's name. He'd repeated it like a mantra, using the words to push aside the images flooding his brain. Seraphina burning away her hospital gown, her skin covered in living tattoos. Lady Morgana smiled, beautiful and terrible. Victor throwing a hunter through a wall as easily as Marcus might sweat a fly. The revelation that he wasn't just Marcus Webb, poverty case and nobody, but a weaver, whatever that meant, part of some extinct bloodline that served vampires and saw the future. "This is insane," he muttered, wiping rain from his eyes. "This is completely..." A vision hit him like a punch to the gut. He saw himself crossing the street, saw himself pushing through the church's broken door, saw himself descending stone steps into darkness. And he saw something else down there, something waiting, something that had been waiting for a very long time. It had too many eyes, too many teeth, and it was hungry. The vision passed, leaving Marcus gasping. His hands shook worse than before. The church suddenly looked less like a sanctuary and more like a tomb. But what choice did he have? Behind him was a city full of hunters and vampire kings and women who could make entire lobbies kneel with their presence. At least in the church, there was a door with 3 circles. A door Seraphina had told him about, a door that might lead to answers, or to something with too many teeth. Marcus crossed the street. The church door hung crooked on its hinges, though it's swollen from rain and age. It groaned when Marcus pushed it, the sound echoing to the ruined nave. Inside, the pews were overturned or missing entirely, and water pooled on the floor, reflecting the jagged remains of the stained glass. The altar at the far end had been vandalized. Spray paint covered religious symbols Marcus didn't recognize, and someone had built a small fire there once, leaving black scorch marks that looked almost intentional, like another form of worship. "Hello," Marcus called, his voice small in the vast space. No answer, just the sound of rain on broken stone and the distant rumble of impossible thunder. He made his way toward the back of the church, where a small door stood half hidden behind a fallen beam. The door was newer than the rest of the structure, heavy wood reinforced with iron bands that showed no rust despite the damp. Marcus pulled the beam aside with effort, his arms screaming, and tugged the door open. Stone steps descended into absolute darkness. The air that wafted up was cold and dry, carrying scents that made Marcus's head spin. Incense, old paper, something metallic like blood but sweeter. His phone was dead, had been dead since he'd run from the shelter 3 hours ago, following a vision that said go now, run to hospital, save the girl. So he had no flashlight, no way to see what waited below. He descended anyway, one hand trailing along the damp stone wall, counting steps to keep his mind from spiraling into panic. 20 steps, 30, 40. The darkness pressed against him like a physical thing, and Marcus had the irrational thought that if he reached forward, he might be able to feel its texture, hold it in his hands like fabric. At 63 steps, his foot hit level ground. Marcus stood still, straining to hear anything beyond his own breathing. Silence. No, not silence. Something else. A sound so soft it might have been his imagination. Breathing. Multiple somethings. Breathing in perfect synchronization. Hello? He tried again, hating how his voice cracked. Serafina sent me. I'm supposed to find a door. 3 circles. I'm supposed to. Light bloomed. It didn't come from any source Marcus could identify. No torch, no bulb, no flame. It simply appeared, as if the air itself decided to remember what brightness was. The basement revealed itself in shades of amber and gold, and Marcus's breath caught. The space was vast, far larger than the church above should have allowed. Pillars carved with symbols stretched toward a ceiling lost in shadow. The floor was inlaid with a complex pattern. Circles within circles, geometric designs that seemed to shift when Marcus looked at them directly. And lining the walls, sitting on stone benches or standing in alcoves, were people. No, not people. They didn't move, didn't breathe normally. That synchronized breathing Marcus had heard came from all of them at once, as if they were parts of a single organism. Their skin had the gray-white pallor of mushrooms, and their eyes, when they blinked, reflected the golden light like a cat's. Some were impossibly tall. Others were short and twisted. One appeared to be made partially of mist, their form never quite solid. A weaver. One of them said, the voice coming from everywhere and nowhere. How unexpected. How perfectly, wonderfully unexpected. Marcus backed toward the stairs, his heart hammering. I'm just looking for a door. 3 circles. Serafina said. Serafina. Another voice interrupted. This one female and layered like multiple people speaking at once. Victor's daughter. She woke. Then, the machines released her. And you were the key. A figure stepped forward from the group. A woman who might have been beautiful once. But something had gone wrong with her proportions. Her arms were too long. Her fingers had too many joints. And her smile showed too many teeth. We felt it happen. Felt the Weaver gift activate after centuries of dormancy. You lit up like a star in our awareness. Were you? Marcus whispered. The forgotten, the woman said. The in-between. The things that fell through the cracks when the world chose what was real and what was myth. We exist here, in places like this, waiting for the wheel to turn, for magic to remember us. She tilted her head at an angle that would have broken a human neck. And now you brought magic right to our door. Literally. It's behind you. Marcus spun. Where the stairs should have been, there was now a wall. And set into that wall was a door, ancient wood bound with iron, with 3 circles carved into its surface. The circles glowed faintly, pulsing like heartbeats. For Knox, the woman reminded him, and speak her name. But be warned, little Weaver. What lies beyond that door isn't safety. It's commitment. Once you knock, once you speak her name and enter the sanctuary, you become part of the war. Victor's war. The war that's been brewing for 300 years, ever since the last Weaver died and the balance tipped. Her 2 long fingers gestured at the door. You could refuse. Stay here with us. We don't take sides. We just watch and wait, and exist in the margins. It's peaceful here. Safe. Marcus looked at her, at all of them, these forgotten things with their synchronized breathing and impossible bodies. They weren't threatening him. They seemed almost sad, these creatures caught between existence and oblivion. And part of Marcus, a large part, wanted to accept, to stay here in this golden-lit basement, to hide from hunters and vampire queens and prophecies he didn't understand. But then another vision hit. He saw Serafina, saw her fighting Lady Morgana in the hospital lobby, saw her losing, her tattoos burning out one by one as Morgana's power overwhelmed her, saw Victor arriving too late, saw him cradling his daughter's body as she turned to Ashen's arms, saw the hunters closing in, saw the end of something old and important, and he saw what came after, a world where things like the forgotten didn't hide in church basements. They ceased to exist entirely. A world that had chosen what was real with such finality that even the margins disappeared. The vision released him, and Marcus staggered, bile rising in his throat. If I don't go through that door, he asked the woman, what happens? She met his eyes, and in her alien gaze, Marcus saw something like respect. You know what happens. You've seen it. The seers always see. Marcus turned to the door, raised his shaking fist, knocked once, twice, 3 times, 4. Serafina, he said, and his voice didn't crack this time. It rang out clear and strong, echoing through the basement, bouncing off the impossible pillars and the geometric floor. Serafina, I'm here. Let me in. The door swung open, revealing not a room but a passage, a corridor that stretched impossibly far, lit by torches that burned with blue flame. And standing at the entrance, waiting, was a man Marcus had never seen before. He was young, maybe 20, with dark skin and eyes like molten gold. He wore jeans and a hoodie, looking completely ordinary except for those eyes and the way the air shimmered around him. Marcus Webb, the man said, not a question. The Lost Weaver. About damn time you showed up. We've been waiting 300 years. He stepped aside, gesturing into the corridor. Welcome to the sanctuary. Welcome to the war. And welcome, Marcus, to discovering exactly what you are and what you were always meant to become. Marcus looked back one last time at the forgotten, at their sad eyes and their synchronized breathing. Then he stepped through the door. It closed behind him with a sound like finality, like the ending of one story and the beginning of another. The corridor stretched ahead, blue flames casting dancing shadows. The young man started walking, and Marcus followed, his wet shoes squeaking on the stone floor. Name's Elias, the man said conversationally, as if they were meeting at a coffee shop rather than in an impossible hallway under an abandoned church. I'm what you'd call a hybrid, half vampire, half human. Got the best of both worlds, the strength and speed and immortality, but I can still walk in daylight and eat actual food. Victor made me about 50 years ago. I'm his, well, we don't use terms like servant anymore. Let's say I'm his associate. Where are we going? Marcus asked. His voice sounded hollow in the corridor, as if the walls absorbed sound. The council room. Victor's called an emergency meeting. All the major players of the hidden world, or at least those who are in the city and can get there fast enough. Elias glanced back, his golden eyes assessing. They're going to want to see you. The Weavers were legendary. Prophets who could see the threads of fate, who could sometimes even pull them, change destiny itself. When they died out, the hidden world lost its ability to anticipate threats. We've been flying blind for 3 centuries. His smile was sharp. You showing up now, when tensions are at an all-time high, when Lady Morgana is making her play for total dominion. That's not coincidence. That's fate, saying the game's about to change. They turned a corner, and the corridor opened into a vast chamber. It was circular, carved from a single piece of stone, with a domed ceiling painted with constellations Marcus didn't recognize. A round table dominated the center, not wood, but some dark material that seemed to shift and flow like liquid. Around it sat 7 figures. Victor was there, his silver-white hair disheveled, his suit torn and bloody. He looked exhausted in a way that seemed impossible for something immortal. Serafina sat beside him, now dressed in black leather, the living tattoos on her arms visible and moving slowly like breathing creatures. Her violet eyes found Marcus, and she smiled with genuine relief. The other 5 were strangers, a woman with blue skin and gills visible on her neck, a man who appeared to be made of living shadow, his form constantly dissolving and reforming, a teenage girl with antlers growing from her temples and eyes like a deer's, an elderly man in a 3-piece suit who radiated such intense cold that frost formed on the table in front of him, and a creature that Marcus's brain couldn't quite process, something with too many limbs and a face that seemed to exist in multiple dimensions at once. They all turned to look at him as he entered. The weight of their gazes made Marcus want to run, but Elias's hand on his shoulder kept him in place. The Weaver, Victor said, his voice hoarse. He made it. Barely, Marcus muttered, but no one laughed. They were too busy staring at him like he was either a miracle or a bomb, possibly both. The woman with blue skin spoke first, her voice carrying an accent that reminded Marcus of ocean waves. Victor, explain. Explain how a Weaver bloodline survived 300 years of hunting. Explain how you found him. Explain. And her eyes hardened. Why you didn't tell the rest of us? Because I didn't know, Victor said, and Marcus heard truth in his voice. Not until tonight. I've been searching for weavers for decades, following every rumor, every whisper of children with prophetic gifts. They all burned out or went mad. But this one, he gestured at Marcus. This one survived, kept his gift dormant, buried, until the moment was right. The moment being your daughter's awakening, the Shadow Man said thoughtfully, Interesting. So the boy's gift activated in service to you. That creates a bond. A debt. No, Marcus said, surprising himself. All eyes turned to him again, and he forced himself to keep talking despite his terror. No debt. I came to the hospital because I had a vision, because I saw a girl dying who didn't have to die. I didn't know anything about vampires or weavers or any of this. I just knew I had to help. Seraphina stood, moving to Marcus's side. She looked stronger now, more solid, though Marcus noticed her hands tremble slightly. He's telling the truth. I was conscious during my coma, trapped in the space between life and death. I could see the threads of fate, see the futures branching and collapsing. In every single future where I died, the world followed. Morgana's power grows unchecked. The hidden world is exposed to humanity. War breaks out, not just between our kinds, but with humans who now know monsters are real. Billions die. She looked at each council member in turn. But in the one future where I lived, where Marcus found me and spoke the words that let me return, something changes. The thread doesn't break. It bends. Into what? The elderly man asked, frost spreading further across the table. I don't know yet, Seraphina admitted. That's why we need Marcus. Real weavers could read the full tapestry, see all the threads and how they connect. I can only see fragments. But she squeezed Marcus's shoulder gently. He's untrained, unaware, but his gift is strong. Stronger than any weaver in the historical records. If we can teach him, if we can help him learn to control and channel his visions, he might be able to see what we need to do, how to stop Morgana, how to prevent the exposure of our world. Marcus wanted to protest, to explain that he wasn't strong or special, that he was just a kid who'd had bad dreams his whole life and had learned to ignore them. But the words died in his throat because deep down, underneath the fear and confusion, something was waking up. He could feel it, a sense of awareness, like a third eye opening in the center of his forehead. The tapestry Seraphina mentioned, he could almost see it, threads of light stretching through the air, connecting each person in the room, extending beyond the walls, beyond the city, branching into infinite possibilities. And one thread, glowing brighter than all the others, led from his chest directly to Seraphina. A bond, not of debt or magic, but of something simpler and more powerful. Choice. He had chosen to save her, and she had chosen to wake. And that choice had changed everything. I'll help, Marcus heard himself say. I don't understand any of this, but if what you're saying is true, if my being here means people don't die, then I'll help. He looked around at these impossible beings, these creatures from myth and nightmare. Just promise me something. Promise me that when this is over, whatever happens, you'll let me go home. The silence that followed was heavy. Victor stood, moving around the table to face Marcus directly. Up close, the Vampire King looked ancient despite his young face, tired in a way that transcended the physical. I promise, Victor said and extended his hand. When the threat is over, when Morgana is dealt with and the hidden world is safe, you can walk away. Return to your normal life. We'll even ensure you're taken care of, a real home, education, whatever you need. You have my word, and a Vampire King's word is absolute. Marcus shook his hand. Victor's grip was cold but firm, and when their skin touched, Marcus saw a future, not far ahead, days, maybe weeks. He saw this same room covered in blood, saw Victor standing over Seraphina's body, her tattoos dark and still, saw himself screaming, threads of light erupting from his hands, pulling at reality itself, saw something terrible being born from his grief and rage. The vision ended. Victor's eyes widened slightly. You saw something. Yeah, Marcus whispered, not releasing his hand. I saw, and we need to start training me now. Right now. Because what's coming. He met Victor's ancient gaze. What's coming is worse than any of you imagine, and I'm the only one who might be able to stop it. The council meeting dissolved into urgent planning. Elias led Marcus to a side chamber where books and scrolls filled floor-to-ceiling shelves, a library of magical knowledge spanning millennia. And as Marcus began the process of learning what he truly was, somewhere across the city, Lady Morgana stood in the ruins of St. Michael's Hospital and smiled. The lost Weaver has emerged, she said to the shadows that served her. Perfect. Let him learn. Let him grow strong. Let them believe he's their salvation. Her smile widened, showing teeth too sharp to be human. They have no idea that his awakening is exactly what I've been waiting for. The final piece of my grand design. She raised her hand, and in her palm, a thread of light appeared, stolen from Marcus's tapestry, plucked from the fabric of fate itself during their brief encounter. She studied it, this thread of possibility and power. Soon, she whispered, soon, little Weaver, you'll understand. There's no stopping what's coming. There's only choosing which side you'll serve when the hidden world burns. 3 weeks had passed since Marcus Webb walked through the door with 3 circles, and in that time, he'd learned that destiny weighed approximately the same as every decision he'd ever made pressing down on him at once, which was to say, too much, far too much. The sanctuary, as Elias and the others called it, existed in a pocket dimension beneath the church. Time moved differently here. Those 3 weeks in the outside world had been 3 months in the sanctuary, 3 months of intensive training that had reshaped Marcus from a frightened boy into something else. Not quite a man, not quite human anymore either. He stood now in the library's meditation chamber, a circular room with walls made of crystallized time. They literally showed the past, present, and future simultaneously, the images bleeding into each other like watercolors left in the rain. Marcus wore a robe similar to what Seraphina wore, black fabric that somehow absorbed light, and his arms were covered in temporary tattoos. Not the living kind that Seraphina bore, but training wheels, symbols inked with a mixture of his own blood and ground moonstone that would help him channel his visions without losing himself in them. Focus, Seraphina said from behind him. She'd been his primary teacher, patient and demanding in equal measure. Don't try to see everything. Pick a thread. Just one. Follow it to its conclusion. Marcus closed his eyes, not because he needed to, but because the tapestry of fate was overwhelming when he looked at it with both physical and prophetic sight at once. In the darkness behind his eyelids, the threads appeared. Millions of them. Billions. Every choice, every possibility. Every life and death and love and loss branching out into infinity. It had terrified him at first, that vastness. It still did if he was honest, but he'd learned to filter it, to focus on specific patterns. He reached out mentally and grasped a thread. This one was blue-silver, vibrating with tension. He followed it forward in time, watching it twist and split and merge with others. And there, I see a meeting, Marcus said, his voice distant even to his own ears. Tomorrow night, midnight, the old warehouse district, Building 17. Morgana will be there. She's negotiating with the hunters, offering them information about the hidden world's location in exchange for... He frowned, pushing deeper into the vision. In exchange for their help killing Victor. She's promised them access to vampire blood, to longevity and power. Will they accept? Seraphina asked, her voice carefully neutral. Marcus followed the thread further, watching the future's branch. 3 possible outcomes. In the first, they accept and the alliance happens. The hunters turn on us during the next full moon. In the second, they refuse, and Morgana kills them as an example. In the third... He paused, confused. In the third, someone else arrives at the meeting. Someone I can't see clearly. Their presence disrupts the pattern. The futures become clouded after that point. Someone you can't see? Seraphina's voice sharpened. That's not possible. Weavers can see everything except the void, entities that exist outside fate itself. But there are only 3 known void beings in existence, and they're all accounted for. Marcus opened his eyes, releasing the thread. The meditation chamber snapped back into focus, its time crystal walls settling into a slightly less dizzying rotation. Well, either there's a fourth or I'm still screwing this up. You're not screwing it up, Serafina assured him, though she looked troubled. She moved the wall and traced one of the many symbols carved there, this one depicting an eye within a spiral. You progress faster than any weaver in the historical records. Most took decades to learn what you've mastered in months. She hesitated. It's almost too fast. Is that a bad thing? Marcus asked, though he already knew the answer. He'd seen it in her face, in the worried glances Victor gave him when he thought Marcus wasn't looking. They were concerned about him burning out, about his human mind fracturing under the weight of infinite knowledge. It had happened before to weavers who pushed too hard, too fast. They'd gone mad, or their brains had simply stopped, unable to process any more futures. It means we might not have much time, Serafina said honestly. She sat beside him on the meditation cushion, and Marcus noticed, not for the first time, how beautiful she was, and how impossibly distant. She was ancient compared to him, a vampire who'd lived for over 300 years. He was 14, human, temporary. The gap between them might as well have been the space between stars. But in quiet moments like this, when she let her guard down, he forgot about that gap. He just saw a girl who'd been trapped in a coma for months, who'd fought her way back to life, who carried the weight of her father's war on shoulders that shouldn't have to bear such burden. Tell me something, Marcus said impulsively. Something about before the hunters, before the coma, when you were just you. Serafina smiled, and it was the first truly unguarded expression Marcus had seen from her. Just me? I haven't been just me since 1723, when my father turned me to save my life after a carriage accident. But before that, she looked at the time crystal walls, though Marcus suspected she was looking through them, into memory. I was a pianist. Not a great one, but I loved it. I'd play in the parlor of my father's estate. He was human, then a merchant, and my mother would sing. She had the most beautiful voice. Her smile faded. She died in the accident, too. Father saved me, but couldn't save her. I think that's when something broke in him, when he decided mortality was a curse to be escaped rather than a gift to be cherished. I'm sorry, Marcus said, because what else could you say to someone who'd lost their mother 300 years ago? Don't be. I've had time to grieve. More time than anyone should need. She turned to him, violet eyes serious. But that's why this matters so much, Marcus. That's why we're asking so much of you. Because the hidden world, for all its monsters and magic and impossible things, is still built on the same foundation as the human world. Love, loss, the desperate desire to protect the people we care about. Morgana doesn't understand that. She sees only power, only the game of dominion and control. If she wins, if she exposes our world to humanity and sparks the war I've seen in my visions, everyone loses, human and vampire alike. A knock on the chamber door interrupted them. Elias entered without waiting for permission, his golden eyes bright with urgency. Victor needs you both in the war room. Now, we've got a situation. The war room was chaos. The round table that Marcus had first seen 3 months ago was now covered in maps, physical and mystical, showing both the city's geography and the ley lines of magical power that ran beneath it. Victor stood at the head of the table, looking more exhausted than Marcus had ever seen him. The other council members were there too, plus several new faces, representatives from various factions of the hidden world, all looking equally worried. What happened? Serafina demanded, moving immediately to her father's side. Morgana made her move, Victor said grimly, not against us directly, against the veil itself. He gestured to one of the mystical maps, where a section was glowing angry red. She's opened a breach, a permanent tear in the barrier between the hidden world and the human one. Right in the heart of downtown, in Times Square, thousands of humans have already seen through it, seen actual glimpses of our world. Phones are recording, videos are spreading online. We got maybe hours before the truth becomes undeniable. Marcus felt his blood run cold. He'd seen this future, one of many possible futures, but it had always been weeks or months away. Never this soon. How did she do it so fast? The Shadow Man, whose name Marcus had learned was Umbral, spoke up. She had help. Someone from inside our organization gave her access to the anchor points, the places where the veil is thinnest. With that knowledge, she could tear it with relatively little power. A traitor, the woman with blue skin, Narita, said, her voice flat with fury. Someone in this room, or someone we trust, gave us up. The council erupted into accusations and denials. Marcus watched the threads of light connecting everyone, watching them pulse with emotion, anger, fear, guilt, and their subtle but present, one thread that glowed differently than the others, a thread that led from umbral to nothing, a void in the tapestry. It was you, Marcus heard himself say, his voice cutting through chaos. All eyes turned to him. Umbral, you're the one who gave Morgana the anchor points. The Shadow Man creature, whatever he was, went very still. That's a serious accusation, boy. Do you have proof? I don't need proof, Marcus said, standing. The temporary tattoos on his arms began to glow, responding to the certainty flowing through him. I can see it. Your thread leads to a void, a place where fate doesn't reach. You've made yourself untraceable, but the absence itself is evidence. You're not loyal to the hidden world. You're loyal to something else, something that exists outside our reality. For a long moment, nobody moved. Then Umbral began to laugh, a sound like wind through a graveyard, carrying the whispers of the dead. Clever child. Very clever. Yes, I serve something greater than this petty conflict between Morgana and Victor. I serve the architects, beings who existed before your precious veil was even created. They want this world unified again, want the barriers between reality and myth torn down. Morgana is just a tool. You, and his formless face turned toward Marcus, you were supposed to be another tool, the weaver who would see the futility of resistance and join our cause. Victor moved with vampire speed, but Umbral was faster. He dissolved completely, becoming true shadow, and his voice echoed from everywhere and nowhere. It's too late anyway. The breach is open. Morgana's army is already moving into position. By dawn, every human in the city will know monsters are real. By tomorrow, the world changes forever. And all your prophecies, little Weaver, won't stop it. Then he was gone, truly gone, his presence disappearing from the tapestry entirely. The room exploded into action. Victor was shouting orders, sending council members to rally their forces, to prepare for the conflict that was now inevitable. Serafina grabbed Marcus's arm. We need to go, now, to the breach. If we can close it before Morgana's full plan unfolds. We can't close it, Marcus said, and his voice sounded strange to his own ears, layered, as if speaking with multiple voices from multiple possible futures all at once. I've seen it. Every future where we try to close the breach conventionally, we fail. Morgana's too powerful, too prepared. She's been planning this for decades. Centuries, maybe, the only way to stop her. He trailed off because the truth was too terrible to speak aloud. He'd seen it in his training sessions, had avoided looking too closely at that particular thread because of what it meant. But now, with Umbral's betrayal and Morgana's breach and the world hanging in balance, he couldn't avoid it anymore. The only way to stop her is for me to become something I'm not supposed to be, Marcus finished quietly. A weaver doesn't just see the threads of fate. The most powerful ones could pull them, change them, rewrite destiny itself. It's the ultimate taboo, the reason so many weavers were hunted and killed, because that kind of power doesn't belong in mortal hands. But if I can learn how, if I can figure out how to not just see the future, but alter it. He met Serafina's eyes. I can stop Morgana. I can close the breach and save the veil. But it will change me. Fundamentally. I won't be human anymore. I might not even be me anymore. No, Serafina said immediately. Absolutely not. We'll find another way. There is no other way. Marcus pulled up his sleeve, showing her the temporary tattoos. These have been getting darker, haven't they? More permanent. My body is already changing, adapting to the power flowing through it. I'm becoming what I was always meant to be, what my bloodline was created to be, a living anchor point between worlds, between what is and what could be. Victor approached them, his ancient face grave. Marcus is right. I can see it in him. The transformation has already started. He's too powerful to remain fully human. Within days, maybe hours, his mortal mind will burn out trying to contain what he's becoming. His only chance at survival is to complete the transformation willingly, with control, to embrace what he is. And if he does, Serafina demanded, what happens to him? He becomes eternal, Victor said. Not vampire, not human, but something else. A living prophecy. A being who exists in all time simultaneously, past, present, and future. He'd be able to stop Morgana. Yes. Rewrite the threads of fate, to close the breach. But he'd also lose his connection to the mortal world. Lose his ability to live a normal life, to grow old, to be free, Marcus finished. That's what you promised me, remember? When this was over, I could go home. Have a real life. Victor's expression was genuinely pained. I know, and I release you from your obligation. You've done more than enough. We'll find another way, even if it costs us everything. You deserve your freedom, Marcus. Your life. Marcus looked at Serafina, at Victor, at all the assembled council members preparing for a war they couldn't win. He thought about the shelter where he'd lived, about sleeping on thin mattresses and eating from soup kitchens, and being invisible to a world that didn't care if people like him lived or died. That had been his normal life. That had been his freedom. But these past 3 months, learning, growing, discovering that he had power and purpose, hadn't that been freedom too? A different kind, maybe, but real. He closed his eyes and looked at the tapestry, saw all the futures branching from this moment, in the ones where he refused, where he ran away and tried to reclaim his old life. He saw the world burning, saw Morgana's victory, saw humans and hidden folk alike die in a war that consumed everything. But in the futures where he accepted, where he took the final step into transformation, the threads became so bright he could barely look at them. He saw himself standing at the breach, hands raised, pulling at the fabric of reality itself. Saw Morgana's shock, saw her power being unmade thread by thread, saw the veil repairing itself, the world returning to balance. And he saw himself afterward, changed, eternal, powerful beyond measure, but also peaceful, content, part of something greater than himself. I choose, Marcus said, opening his eyes. I choose to complete the transformation, to become what I was meant to be, not because I have to, but because I want to, because these 3 months have shown me something my old life never did. I matter. What I do matters. And if I can use this power to save people, to save everyone, then that's not a sacrifice. That's a gift. Serafina was crying, he realized, actual tears running down her face. Vampires weren't supposed to cry, but she was. You're 14 years old, she whispered. You're a child. I was a child, Marcus corrected gently. But I grew up the moment I walked into that hospital room and spoke prophecy. There's no going back from that, only forward. He turned to Victor. Tell me what I need to do. The ritual took place at the breach itself. They'd teleported there, using one of Serafina's mystical circles, a form of magic Marcus was learning but hadn't mastered yet. Times Square was chaos. The breach hung in the air like a wound in reality, a shimmering tear that showed glimpses of impossible things. Humans stood frozen, phones raised, filming. Some were screaming. Others stood silent, their minds struggling to process what they were seeing. And in front of the breach stood Morgana, beautiful and terrible, surrounded by an army of creatures Marcus didn't recognize. Things with too many limbs and not enough faces, entities that had been banished from reality centuries ago and were now being allowed back through. Victor, Morgana called out cheerfully when she saw them arrive. You brought the Weaver. How thoughtful. I was hoping to collect myself, but this saves time. Her ice-chip eyes found Marcus. Hello, little prophet. Come to witness the dawn of the new age. Come to end it, Marcus replied, stepping forward despite Seraphina's hand trying to hold him back. The temporary tattoos on his arms were burning now, smoking as the power inside him built toward critical mass. You made a mistake, Morgana. You thought the Weavers were extinct. You thought there was no one left who could oppose you. Oh, I knew about you, Morgana said, waving dismissively. That's why I put Victor's daughter in a coma, to draw you out, to activate your dormant gifts. Everything that's happened has been part of my design. She smiled, including this moment. You think you're here to stop me? You're here because I need you. A Weaver powerful enough to alter fate is the final component of my spell. Your transformation will tear the veil apart completely, once and for all. Marcus felt his certainty waver. Could it be true? Had every choice been manipulated? Every vision guided toward this moment? He looked at the tapestry, searching for the truth, and found nothing. Or rather, he found two truths, equally valid, existing in superposition. In one, Morgana was lying, bluffing to make him doubt himself. In the other, she was telling the complete truth, and his transformation would doom the world. The threads of fate refused to resolve into a single answer, because the choice was his, made freely, and free will existed outside of prophecy. You know what? Marcus said, beginning to laugh. It doesn't matter. Whether you planned this or not, whether my transformation helps or hurts your cause, it doesn't matter, because I'm not doing this for destiny. I'm doing it for them. He gestured at the frozen humans, at the hidden world forces gathering behind Victor, at Seraphina, who stood ready to fight despite her tears. For people who deserve a chance to live their lives without gods and monsters deciding their fates. So here's my choice, Morgana. My free choice, untouched by your manipulations or anyone else's. I choose to transform. I choose to become what I was meant to be. And then I choose to rewrite every single thread of fate that leads to your victory. He closed his eyes and let go. The transformation was agony and ecstasy in equal measure. Marcus felt his human form burning away. Not literally, but metaphorically, all the limitations and boundaries that defined him as a single person in a single time dissolving. The temporary tattoos became permanent, sinking into his skin and then deeper, becoming part of his very essence. He could see now, really see not just threads, but the entire loom of existence, the cosmic mechanism that wove reality moment by moment. And he could touch it, could grasp the threads and pull. He pulled at the thread of Morgana's army, unraveling their existence from this timeline. They'd existed in the banished realm for centuries. He simply extended that exile, removing them from the present. They vanished, not destroyed but displaced, sent back to where they came from. Morgana screamed in fury, launching spells that would have unmade a normal person. They struck Marcus and dissolved like rain on hot stone. He pulled at the thread of the breach itself, gathering the torn edges of reality and pulling them closed. It resisted. Morgana's power had been woven deep, but Marcus was stronger now. He was connected to every moment simultaneously, drawing power from past and future both. The breach sealed with a sound like the universe, sighing in relief. Finally, he pulled at Morgana's own thread, not to kill her. He could see now that she'd been as much a victim as an architect of these events. Corrupted by the architect's umbral served, twisted into something far from what she'd once been. So instead of destroying her, Marcus pulled her thread backward, reversing corruption, returning her to a moment before the darkness took hold. She collapsed, her power draining away, leaving only a confused woman who looked around Times Square with dawning horror. "What have I done?" she whispered. "What have I become?" Marcus wanted to answer, but his human voice was gone. He existed in all times now, was having this conversation, had had it yesterday, would have it tomorrow, each moment equally present. He could see Seraphina running toward him, could see her reaching for him even as he became less solid, less anchored to this single point in time. "Marcus," she cried, "don't go. Please. There has to be a way to reverse this." He smiled, or at least the part of him that was still Marcus Webb smiled. "I'm not going," he said, his voice coming from everywhere and nowhere. "I'm just spreading out, becoming part of the pattern, instead of a single thread. But I'll always be here, Serafina, watching, protecting, making sure the future stay bright. He pulled at one final thread, the memory of this event from all the human witnesses, not erasing it, but softening it, making it dreamlike and uncertain. They'd remember something strange happened in Times Square, but the details would blur. The veil would hold, and then Marcus Webb, the lost weaver, the boy from the shelter who'd had nothing but bad dreams and worse luck, ascended into something beyond human understanding. He became the guardian of threads, the keeper of possibilities, a living force that existed to maintain the balance between worlds. Victor knelt, his ancient pride finally breaking into genuine reverence. The council members followed suit. Even Morgana, stripped of her power but not her awareness, bowed to the being Marcus had become. Only Serafina remained standing, violet eyes locked on the shimmering form that held traces of the boy she taught. "Will I see you again?" she asked. "Do you that still Marcus?" "You're seeing me right now," Marcus replied, his voice warm despite its otherworldly quality. "And you'll see me in every sunrise you witness, every choice you make, every life you save. I'm woven into the fabric of your existence, Serafina, as you are woven into mine. Some threads, once connected, can never truly be severed." He touched her cheek, or the memory of touching her cheek, and then he was everywhere and nowhere, past and future and eternal present all at once. In the weeks that followed, life in both worlds returned to a semblance of normal. The veil held strong, reinforced by the guardian who watched from outside time. Morgana, stripped of her corruption, dedicated herself to rebuilding what she destroyed, working with Victor toward genuine peace. The hidden world entered a new era, one of cautious optimism. And sometimes, in quiet moments, Serafina would sit at an old piano in the sanctuary and play the songs her mother taught her centuries ago. And she'd feel a presence beside her, warmth without source, companionship without form. The guardian, watching over her as he'd promised, as he always would. Marcus Webb had turned off the machines and saved a girl from a coma. In doing so, he'd saved two worlds and transformed himself into something mythological. Not bad for a poor boy from a shelter who just wanted to help. Not bad at all.